Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear,
business consultant.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear Business Consulting.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jay Shear with Jay Shear Business Consulting. We build solid foundations for service-based businesses to grow and scale and achieve the results and success they deserve. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. Brian Tracy said, "Excellence is not a destination. It is a continuous journey that never ends." Well, on today's episode, we talk about that journey, the pursuit of excellence, the uncommon behaviors of the world's most productive achievers, and more. Our guest is a husband and father to 5 girls. He's a keynote speaker and leadership advisor, author of 2 books, and the founder and host of the wildly popular business podcast, The Learning Leader Show, which is listened to by millions of people in more than 150 countries. His list of clients includes some of the world's leading brands, including Dell, Microsoft, Salesforce, and Dodge. Please welcome the man who understands that the pursuit of excellence is about being better tomorrow than today, Ryan Hawk. Ryan, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Jay. Appreciate you having me, man. Thanks for the kind intro, man.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. I'm grateful for you, and I'm super excited to jump into today's conversation. So let's get right to it. So we know that mentors can help shape our lives and careers, and you dedicate in your latest book, The Pursuit of Excellence, you dedicate this book to your grandpa, Dean Hawk. And I understand that Dean encouraged you to write books. So share with us, if you will, how he has inspired and impacted your life and how you show up to the world.
I think he's just the definition of selfless leadership, of serving others. I grew up watching him take great care of my aunt, who was special needs for her entire life, from birth until death, for more than 40 years. Wheelchair bound for the majority of that. Never complained once, always a big smile on his face, always did whatever he could to make her love the day. My dad calls them joyous people, his parents. I would say the same. My grandma, unfortunately, had a similar bad run of health towards the end of her life as well, and he did the exact same for her. So my grandpa has he's just as good as it gets when it comes to loving and taking care of other people and doing it with an amazing attitude. I think that's what leaders do. They understand that he took on that responsibility and did it with a big smile. And I think we all could learn from people like that, who they don't complain, they don't ask for awards, they're not looking for pats on the back, they just do the right thing. And to me, I'm inspired by that model of leadership, and it's great that he's still out there doing it today. Even got asked to be the mayor of the small town where he lives in Sabina, Ohio, and did that for years. And it's just cool, man. It's cool to have that as a model to grow up with.
That's incredible. Do you recall any particular stories that come to mind that you think about when you look back and you think about all the things that you just brought up around about giving to others and giving back and being that type of role model and mentor? Were there specific conversations or anything that you can point to that just resonated with you that sticks today?
I mean, I think it's really just the day-to-day actions. I mean, he was a Sunday school teacher for decades in his church. Again, asked to be the mayor and that was not an easy job, but regularly showed up prepared, ready to go, making change to try to help the place where he lived all that time. And then, like I said, just the servant-based leadership of taking care of loved ones, and doing it with a really good attitude, because that, as a dad myself now, we really focus on the few things that are within our control as we're trying to teach children, and that is simply your attitude and your effort. And I'm lucky enough to grow up in a house with people, my mom and my dad, who fully understood that attitude and effort can go a long way. And I think my dad specifically probably learned that from his parents and my grandpa. So he had told me when you mentioned him asking me to write books when I was still playing football. He was not a football player, so he would ask random questions about the game, and I would do my best to try to take some complexities with the game of football and explain it to him in a way that was easy to understand. And every time I do that, he'd say, "Man, I wish you would just write a book about how to understand football better." And I told him, like, I think there are plenty of those already out there and plenty of smarter football people than me to write that book, but maybe there are other books for me to write. And so away I went on this journey to be an author. And now I'm really proud that I've got two of them out there, and hopefully they're helping people and helping them understand the value of excellence and helping them understand the value of leadership. And that's really what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, we're definitely going to get to your latest book, The Pursuit of Excellence, here in a couple of moments. I want to stay on the thread of mentorship for a moment, because it's such an important topic, and it is something that tends to be one of those common threads that we see amongst those who are living a life of excellence, those who are in the high achieving side of things. And you mentioned your father. Your father, Keith, goes by the name Pistol, or by the moniker Pistol. He was a senior leader at LexisNexis, where you were also a VP. What are some of the common or uncommon behaviors that you saw in your father when you were growing up? And how does that compare to how you see him today? So what are some of those differences, or are they the same?
I think he had a mantra of don't say no if you can say yes, which is kind of the opposite of what people like Warren Buffett and others would say. They say that the most successful people in the world always learn how to say no. My dad is kind of the opposite of that. If somebody needs something, needed help, somebody want to have lunch, anybody within his organization, he would always say yes. Now, because he said yes so much that those would have to sometimes be delayed by months on the calendar because he was meeting with all the other people he said yes to. So I think one is just this default setting to helping other people. He would always say life is just so much richer if you can help other people achieve their objectives and goals along the way. It just feels so much more fulfilling. So I think that being the standard default setting of how he still approaches other people, again, very selfless, very others focused, very just always thinking about what are some ways that I can help other people. And I think that mentality, I didn't realize how rare that was growing up. We just thought it was normal. Me and my brothers, we just thought it was normal. So in a way, it's helped teach me as a dad that the importance of being the model for your kids, that they might not listen to everything you say, but they're watching closely, just like I did when I was a kid. And I don't know if I listened well, but I certainly was noticing what was happening. So stuff like that was a regular occurrence, that people would call the house. This is before cell phones. They'd call the house all the time. Late at night, we'd get phone calls, and I'd hear my dad kind of patiently listen. Okay, offer up some reassurance, ask questions, approach them with curiosity, and then offer some parting advice at the end. He'd always say, I'll try to help you out. And that became just a regular. It happened all the time. And he'd hang up the phone. And I'd say, well, who is that, or what's going on? He'd say, so and so. They're going through a tough time in their career. I'm just trying to help them out. And I think it wasn't like, again, looking for accolades or awards or pats on the back. It was just a standard way to operate. Was somebody needs help, we try to help them out. They need a job, they're going through some stuff, let's try to help them out. Let's try to connect them to somebody. Let's try to find a way to help them and their family. And when that's just the way that you behave, it wears off on the people around you. And so I think that is the ultimate form of leadership, is modeling the behavior for those people who are closest to you to see. And then it inspires them and makes them want to be that way. They think it's normal, which we do. And I think that's because we saw it as just a regular everyday occurrence, not this thing out there looking for notoriety or money or anything like that. And I think because of that behavior is why he was able to build such an amazing career, retire at 60, and now my mom and him do whatever they want, which is awesome. Building a house in Florida, playing a ton of golf, doing whatever he wants to do, still keynote speaking, still consulting when he feels like it. That to me is awesome. So I'm just happy that he's able to build that for himself, and both my parents were, so that they can spend all these years doing whatever they want.
So with all of that said, with your father picking up the phone and always looking for a way to help others, how do you, with all the different areas that you're involved in, with a very active life, 5 children, very successful podcast, books, speaking, advising, all of these things, how do you balance what to say yes to and what to say no to?
I struggle with this a lot. I think I'm getting a little better. My job is different than what my dad's job is. My dad worked within a big corporation, and he was the senior leader with 1,000 people who reported up to him, not directly, obviously, through managers and VPs. So my job's different though, because I am more in the creator business of, I have to regularly produce and create content that then hopefully will help millions of people as it's being shipped weekly. So I have to say no a lot more, because I'm responsible for people in a different way. I don't know how they're going to receive the information. Usually they're going to read a book or listen to a podcast or watch my videos or take in a keynote speech. So I have to spend a lot of time preparing for all of those big moments. My life and then my work life, how I've designed it and set it up, is it's a series of big moments. So there's a big moment like a keynote speech, and then I'm getting ready for the next one, or a big podcast interview, and then I'm getting ready for the next one. So it's a bunch of, like, a roller coaster style of a career, which is not similar to like a corporate VP job where every day you've got meetings and stuff going on. Whereas to me, I am just constantly in a state of getting ready for the next big thing. And it's just a series of big things. So I have to say no way more than he does, just by the nature of our jobs. And so I've gotten better at the fact that if it doesn't seem like it's going to add value to a ton of people, then I usually say no. With that said, I also build in time every day to be responsive to emailers of people of my podcast, to do things like this where I go on other people's podcasts, because it has a chance to help other people. So there's baked in time every day, so where I can be responsive, I can say yes. I don't do a lot of lunch meetings. I don't do a lot of breakfast meetings. I don't do the after work meetings because of my family for the most part. And when I'm in town, I want to be with them. So that's the part that's probably different. I try to help in other ways and try to block time to help in other ways, but I'm not a big out of the office meeting guy. I do it in other ways, I think.
But always focused on adding value and looking for ways to serve
trying
others.
And I think it's important to be responsive. I've reached out to people that I really admire, whether I read their books or I've seen them give a speech or I like their podcast. And, it's an amazing feeling for them to respond and answer my questions or whatever that may be. And so I understand what that feeling is. And it still surprises me that people are surprised that I respond, but I try to be responsive as I can be when someone reaches out to me with a request or a question after a podcast or something from my book. So I think it's important to do that. I think that's a part of leadership, is being responsive to people who are following you.
Yeah, for sure. I like you, I find it a challenge to say no, but I also realize that if I'm saying yes to too many things, there are other things that are very important that are either going to be able to serve more people, help in growing my business, whatever that happens to look like, where I just cannot do those things. And I got myself into a bit of a challenging spot when I left a 30 some odd year corporate career, started my own business, was saying yes to everything. And I just didn't have the bandwidth to do it all. And I'm a bit of a people pleaser type personality. And when you combine that, saying yes to everything, it leaves you no time. There's no space for you to recover and recharge those batteries and refill your own cup.
Yeah, exactly right. That's the hardest part of this, is wanting to be there, wanting to say yes, but knowing then if you do it too much, it starts. It probably started making you be average at a lot of things instead of great at a few things. And that's a fear of mine of I think I've run into that from time to time of, I don't want to be just good or average at a ton of stuff. I'd rather be excellent at a few things, but easier said than done. As you know, Jay, that's not the easiest thing. You want to be there. You want to help people. You want to be supportive. You want to say yes, even though, if you do it too much, it could start damaging pretty much everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So I find it interesting that in your household, you have at least 3 individuals that I know of that all use their voice for good, that use their voice to tell their story. So you obviously being one of them, your brother AJ, who had a successful NFL career and uses his voice today, and your father who does voiceover work, he speaks on stages. Is that, when you look at that and you think about 3 individuals from the same household, right? Father, 2 sons, all using their voice in a very effective manner to connect with people, to transform and change lives and entertain and bring so much value. Where do you think that comes from? Is that something that you each cultivated? Was that something that was instilled at an early age?
I think it's a skill that especially my brother and I have had to work on, because if you ask people who knew us, one of my college teammates just came to my book launch party, and he just says, you're just a different person from how you were in college, because there you said the fewest words possible and nothing more ever, and now you basically speak for a living, whether it's on stages or on your podcast. And I think people would say the same thing about my brother AJ. So also it helped. So my dad, early in my career, when I got done playing sports, told me, if you can build the skills to get up and give a 1 minute, 5 minute, 10 minute, 1 hour talk in front of a group and succinctly explain whatever the initiative is, and do it in an entertaining way with stories and science and practical application, if you develop that skill, I guarantee you it will help you in your career. My dad had a job at Ohio Bell, and his first job was as a trainer. So he was up teaching every day, whiteboarding, all this stuff. And he's like, those reps up in front of a group, teaching over and over and over, helped develop this skill that would later go on to, I think, be one of the main reasons why he got promoted so many times, because he crushed it in interviews. He killed the town hall meetings. And when you have the national sales kickoff meetings with thousands of people on stages, which I got to be in the audience for some of those, just blew people away. And that's a big part of the job, is being an effective communicator. So I think, again, we got to see how if you can develop communication skill, you can kind of write your own ticket. So I think that's a big part of it. AJ's really developed those skills. He's incredibly funny, has great quick wit, especially him and Pat McAfee have built. I think the future of media, it's incredible to see what they're doing. But he's done it in his own way, with his own unique style that's different than most, that fits in really well with Pat in that sense. So it's pretty cool to see how we've done it. And when it comes to my podcast, though, I mean, it was really just me out of starting my own leadership PhD program out of my own curiosity. And I think through getting a ton of reps, now more than 460 of them, you just develop some of that skill through repetition and trying really hard to get better and better, and then that bleeds into pretty much all other areas of your life. As you would know, hosting a podcast, it really helps with conversations outside and off of the mic.
So true. So let's stay on the podcast for a moment, because I think, as I look at our audience, we have a good mix of entrepreneurs, small business owners, mid-level managers, podcast hosts, speakers. And when I do have a successful podcast host on, it's always interesting to learn about best practices, to learn what has worked well for you. And with so many podcasts under your belt, so many amazing guests that you've interviewed, and your level of curiosity, your amazing level of preparedness. With all of that, when you first started, and we wind the clock back, what did it take for you? What was the difference then in trying to attract guests that you could carry on a conversation with versus today, where you've built credibility, you've built trust, you've built your brand? What has changed during that time in terms of the amount of prep, the dedication, the discipline, learnings, how you question, all of those different aspects?
I think earlier on, I would lean on the crutch of being overly scripted because I was nervous and I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to say next. Now I write an outline of ideas. I don't really write questions. I write ideas of where I want to go. I take notes based on their books, their TED Talks, other interviews, articles written about them. And then I just highlight some of the areas, and then I kind of formulate questions on the fly based upon what I'm most curious about of that person's story, or maybe something they've written about. At the beginning, it wasn't like that. It was, I would write out every question. I would go from question to question, and some of them still, like, that can still be an effective way to do it. But I think the best questions are follow-up questions, and you only ask good follow-up questions if you're deeply listening to what the person is saying and not just thinking about what's the next question I'm going to ask. You're actually listening, and then you formulate the question as you go. That's the skill. It just takes a lot of repetition, I think. You listen to great interviewers who have done hundreds and hundreds or thousands of interviews. I think that's how most of them do it. They're able to formulate their questions as they go, but there's not really, at least in my experience, there's not really a shortcut or a hack to that. It's just getting the repetition. And I do think you can work on the skills. Like I've gone through improv training a number of times. I'm friends with a person who owns an improv studio, so I can talk to him and run things by him when it comes to deep listening skills and yes and all of the type of the way those performers are able to. Because I do think it's kind of like a dance, a one-on-one interview, and I'm trying to shine a bright light on that person. I'm trying to help them. I'm trying to reinforce. I'm not a journalist. I'm a conversationalist. So I'm not trying to be an award-winning journalist. I'm trying to have an amazing conversation where we all can learn, and that the audience, at least from what they tell me, seems to value when I am following what I'm most curious and passionate about. And by doing that, then they seem to get value out of it as well. So I'm trying to think of the avatar as being me and what I'm most interested in. And it seems like when I do that, people resonate with that. So that's kind of how I've approached it and how I've evolved over now the 7 years of doing this professionally. But yeah, if you listen to some of those early episodes, I mean, there are some that are just amazingly cringy because like that's how it goes at the beginning of most things. You're just not good at it. It takes time. And fortunately, people hung with me and are still listening and tell their friends. But yeah, I listened to some of those early ones, man, and I'm just, whew, I'm surprised anyone listened, so I guess that's how it should go, right?
Absolutely. But it's so funny you say that because we're our own worst critics. So I could listen to those early interviews.
How many have you done?
I'm up over 120. So I'm just beginning.
So same thing, man. Like, yeah, if you listen to like the first 20, 30, 40, 50, like the cool thing about having a podcast, right, Jay, is the fact that you can actually hear your growth. You can hear your improvement happening. I think that's like, to me, that's a motivating and inspiring part of the work that we do, is that you can legitimately hear yourself getting wiser, asking better questions, becoming better at this skill. That's really important. Like that's pretty cool. Like that part of it's, I think is really fun.
Yeah, it truly is. What has improv helped you with? So you brought that up. Where has that helped you in the way that you show up in your podcast, the way that you show up on the stage, or just in life in general?
One, it's helped me. My very first improv class, we got in a big circle, and I didn't know what you were going to do. And I'm with a bunch of strangers, and we get up on stage, and the leader of the class says, okay, when I call your name, you're going to stand in the middle of this circle and you're going to sing one of your favorite songs. That's it, by yourself. Now, obviously most of us are terrible singers. The reason that they did that though is obviously to get you over the thought of being embarrassed in front of a group. So it kind of got me. I was like, no, I'm not. I like, where's the bathroom? Can I just sneak out? Maybe they won't see me. I honestly had that thought. on that one. And I remember getting in there thinking like, I can't even remember the words to a song because I got nervous and I was embarrassed, but I got out there. I remember the first time and I sang the Flintstones, like Flintstones meet, like that's what I did because I could remember. That's the only thing I could remember, only a few words, but it was good enough. And it was like, wasn't even really a song, but that like this thought of not being afraid to be embarrassed was really big that I learned. And then I think one of the big skills that I mentioned before was we did a ton of listening exercises where you were forced to listen all the way to the end of what the person was saying. And then, for example, one of the exercises is you listen all the way to the end, and then your job is to repeat every word that they said, which you usually mess up because it's hard, especially if it's a long sentence, but it forces you to listen all the way to the end. So sometimes you get the beginning right, you mess up some of the stuff in the middle, and then you get the end right. And that proved that you listen to the end. So things like that, I think really of trying to lift your partner up, because that's what improv's all about, trying to be a good active listener, not being afraid to be embarrassed or make a fool of yourself or ask a stupid question, at least that somebody might think. But sometimes the ones that seem stupid or basic are some of the best or create the best answers. And so I think that's why it's been good. I brought the same teacher to my first workshop that I hosted in Dayton, Ohio here. And it was great to see that the people that kind of trust me to share what I've learned when I brought him in as a guest speaker and a guest teacher, that we went through some of those and we were just all embarrassed together. And the cool thing about that though, is it brought us closer together, that group of people, because, when you're doing something really hard together or something that's embarrassing together, you're probably gonna, because you got to be vulnerable, you're probably going to get closer. And that certainly happened.
Amazing.
Highly recommend it for anybody. Highly recommend going and doing it. It's not necessarily like fun, and you'll be looking for the exit probably at some points, but I think you'll be glad that you did if you do go through it. And you also see some people are like wildly talented. I'm not one of those when it comes to that, but there are some you're like, wow, this is impressive. So that part's kind of cool too.
Well, I'm definitely going to have to remember Meet the Flintstones, because if I'm asked to sing a song, I think that's the one I'm going to grab onto. That or AC/DC, I don't know which. But yeah. So you had a successful corporate career. You're a VP of sales before you left the business, and you left the corporate world. You were already doing some podcasts before you left, but then when you leave, obviously that you doubled down, right? You believed in what you were doing. You really invested in honing your skills. What was it? You tell a story about a meeting with Mark Cuban. Was it Mark Cuban's business partner?
Todd Wagner. Yep.
Tell us briefly that story, because that is an important story that ties into you doubling down and really taking this podcast to another level.
So to rewind a little bit more, I had just got my MBA. My company paid $52.50 a year, like most companies reimburse you to go back to school. So I got my MBA. I was considering. I thought it was a waste not to use that $52.50 a year. $5,250 a year is what most corporations will reimburse for education. For further getting a degree or a graduate degree, whatever. So I thought it was kind of a waste not to use it, because I had used it every year that I was employed. But I was looking at these curriculums and the classes you would take to get whether it was a leadership PhD or whatever it may be. And I just wasn't finding anything that I loved. And the MBA process was not that fun. I mean, there were some classes that I just did not like, but I mean, I thought it would help me in my career. And I thought I needed to learn, because I was a communication undergraduate degree at Ohio University, and then got my MBA, and obviously in business, that's what it is. So, but at the same time, I was lucky to have a friend of a friend set up a dinner with Todd Wagner. Now, Todd is the lesser known of the founders of broadcast.com. Mark Cuban's the more well-known. They're still business partners to this day. They still do deals. They work on things together. But anyway, they started broadcast.com together. And when they sold, they both became billionaires. And Todd has a more philanthropic life. Mark still does too, but Todd is more behind the scenes doing that and still working. But anyway, I had this dinner set up, and we both got to dinner early, and I got some one-on-one time with Todd, and I was just peppering and just hammering him with questions. Oh, I don't know, all about starting the business, the tough moments, the good moments. The day they sold to Yahoo, he told about the story of sitting face to face with the leaders at Yahoo. This is when they were like Google, and said, look, you're going to have to buy us or you're going to compete with us. And, they sold for over $5 billion. And I walked away from that night just thinking, this is amazing. I would much rather set up my life to choose my own professors and have long form one-on-one conversations like I just did, as opposed to going back to some more formal education in school. And so from there, combined with the fact that I had done a lot of interviews for my job, because I was at a manager and director level at that time. So I was not only hiring for my own teams, but helping others hire for theirs. So I was interviewing a lot. So I built up some interviewing skill. I had listened to a lot of podcasts at the time. And then I had that dinner. And so the confluence of events of these really cool things happening, thought, well, what if I started my own podcast? What if I learned in public? I create my own form of my own curiosity leadership PhD program. Maybe other people will like it. I don't know. I can't bank on that, but really it was for me. It was a personal project for me to learn. And as you know, when you have the platform of a podcast, it increases your odds of someone like Mark Cuban saying yes to come onto your show versus you just sending them an email saying, can I call you? So that's the other thing that can be good about having a podcast. And if it really grows, then it just continues to open more doors. So that's what I started. I started that on the side, and I actually did it on the side for 3 years. So hundreds of episodes before I decided to leave corporate America and do this full time. So yeah, that's the thing. I had no intention to ever build a business. I had no intention to ever leave. I had no desire to leave. I had a good job. I enjoyed that job. I did it purely for me. And hopefully I thought there's a chance it could help other people if I publish them. And fortunately it did enough of that so that enough opportunities and doors opened that I was able to now do this full time. And now I've been doing that since November of 2017.
Wonderful. So all of that culminates to where we are today. So hundreds of interviews later, you interviewed 500, I believe, different high achievers, and you looked for those commonalities, those uncommon behaviors. You look for those through lines of what leads to excellence. Right? What are these individuals doing differently from everyone else? You distill all that information, you tell great stories, provide tools, provide strategies and resources for all of us to be able to learn from these high achievers and apply those tools in our own professional and personal lives. And all of that culminates to the pursuit of excellence. So tell us, before we dig into this a bit, the process of bringing this book to life and the experience of being able to take all of that information that you're using, right, in your own pursuit of excellence, and being able to create a work of art like this that you may not have necessarily known it, but you believed enough in the project that it was going to change lives and it was going to bring massive value to those who open this book and start to consume it. So talk to us about that process. What was it like? Do you enjoy writing? This is your second book, and talk us through that for a moment.
Yeah, I think there are times I enjoy it and there are times when I don't. It depends on the day. I mean, process wise, I've been gathering stories from my own life and the lives of others, some that I've interviewed, some that I haven't. And I think I'm asked a lot of what are those common behaviors or uncommon behaviors of the world's most productive achievers. Maybe not asked in that language, but a question in that regard. And so one of the ways I'm a prompt-driven speaker and a prompt-driven writer. What I mean by that is I love being supplied with prompts, with questions. I've hired multiple writing coaches and editors to help me, and usually part of their job is to supply me with prompts, and then I'll go off by myself and answer those questions and then ship them to them. And then we work on editing them and formatting them properly so that it flows. So it's really based on the questions that I've been asked now from doing the podcast for so long. of what I've learned. And so there's a combination of stories from my life. There's stories from the lives of people I've interviewed. And then there's stories from lives that I've read about, because I think there's more than 200 citations in this book from outside of my own podcast interviews. So there's a lot of research done to go into that, of looking for what are the uncommon behaviors of the world's most productive achievers. And productive achievers is a big phrase for me. What I mean by that is people who have achieved big things. They've left a dent in the world, but they've done it in a way that's productive for society, not in a bad way. They've done it in a way that helps other people, that does good for the world. So that part of it's really big. So I love gathering those stories. So I've been gathering them for many years. And then it went from the process of gathering all of those stories to figuring out what stays in the book, what's the proper way that this thing should flow, how should we start it, how should each chapter go, how should one go on to the next. That part's really hard. I needed a lot of help from people. We rearranged, we redid and recut over and over and over the course of 2 years, and eventually got to the place to where it is now. And I'm really proud of it. I'm happy. I'm glad that people seem to like it. I'm glad that they seem to find it useful. I mentioned it earlier when we were talking, but I'm a story science practical application guy. So tell the story to engage you. The science proves that it's true, and the practical application answers the question, so what? Why should I care? As the reader, like, how can I implement this into my life? How can I take action? And that's really what it's all about. So I try my best to do that. Don't always hit the mark, but that's kind of how this book got done. And there were tough days and not as tough days, but ultimately we got there. I just set small goals each day in order to hit, and just have a rule to never miss, no matter what, when I'm in book writing mode. And fortunately, I strung together enough of those days that we got it done on time and turned it in, and away we go. Here it is.
So one of the things that I noticed, other than the incredible content and which the way you've structured this, is that there's no fluff in this book. There are so many other books on leadership, on excellence, that would be 2 times the size of this book, but it would be complete with filler, with a lot of information that just retells something over and over again. And you really, from my reading of this, you've stripped all of that down, have taken all relevant content and the stories that are all applicable, but it's all meaningful. It's meat on the bone. And I appreciate that, because I think what it says is not only when you pick this up and read it, that you are going to receive pure value, but I respect your time and I respect you as an individual. So if I'm going to give you something, if I'm going to ask you to spend some time reading this, I want it to be the most valuable use of your time. That's what I gathered when I first started to go through it. So I want to thank you for that. And that was intentional, I would assume.
I mean, I hope so. I mean, that's the goal. I mean, the first draft had more than 80,000 words in it. So we shaved off more than 20 to get it to where it's at right now. I think, I mean, I really hope that authors put the fewest number of words as possible in books. So what is it that you're trying to say to create the change and the action that you want? And how can you do it in as few words as possible? I think that should be what we're all striving for. That's what I try to do. I don't know if everyone shares your opinion. I hope they do. I mean, that was my intent, but that doesn't always happen. I know what you mean, where books start strong and then they fill with fluff in order to hit an arbitrary word count that a publisher sets forth. And fortunately, McGraw-Hill was very lenient with me on that. I said this book could end up being anywhere between 40 and 80,000 words, and I'm not sure yet, because I sold the book deal before the book was written. We just had the proposal, which there are some sample chapters in the proposal, but obviously the whole book isn't written, so it's hard to know. And so I don't like it. When I hear these stories where they're like, well, I had to get to 70 or 80 because it makes the book this thick and that looks better on the shelves or whatever it may be. Because what if you don't have 70,000 good words? What if it's 40? Well, then the book should be 40 at that point. And I promise you I mean, most people prefer shorter books. So like you almost, I think as an author, and I'll think of this even more going forward. My goal is for my next one to be even shorter. How do you say as much as possible in as few as words as possible? It's really hard. I think it takes a lot of work, good editing, rewriting and drafting and cutting in order to get there. But the best of the best, I think that they're able to do that well. And I'm kind of at the beginning stages of figuring that out. And I'm confident that or at least I intend to continue getting better at that. But I'm happy to hear you say that.
Yeah. And what I love about what you just said is that it continues to show that you are on that journey, right? That you truly live these words. This is a pursuit, right? This is the pursuit of excellence. So it's not a place that we are ultimately reaching. It's something that we're continuing to hone and work on our skills and get better and ask better questions. Same thing with your podcast, same thing with your interviewing skills, same thing with your keynote speeches, same thing with your writing. So the next book, it's you just continue to get better, but a lot to be proud of. Another thing that I thought when I first picked up the book, and I'm looking at the title and digging into it to better understand its content, is I was looking at some comparisons or contrasting that of Tom Peters in Search of Excellence. And you had the opportunity to interview Tom. I believe it was episode 252, if my memory serves. But nonetheless, it seems to me, so Tom talks about in Search of Excellence. Here in this book, you found excellence. So it's really interesting how as we go through this, every page, every story, every person that's mentioned, it's just filled with excellence. So I wanted to just very briefly dig into the book because you break this down really into three parts. So you have the build, the fuel, and then the chase are the three primary parts to the book. And then you dig deep into each of those areas. Let's start with the build, because one of the first things that you talk about in this book is around mindset. So speak to us for a moment about the importance of mindset and how that became one of the first important pieces that you address.
Well, as I mentioned, as a dad, one of the things you have control over is your attitude. The other being your effort. I think that is completely within your own control. The mindset that you bring to things. I told the full life story of Dr. Carol Dweck. You know, she wrote the book Mindset, which I'm sure most people listening to a podcast like this have heard of Carol Dweck and know what a growth versus a fixed mindset is. And I think at least in my experience, I've understood and probably had a fixed mindset at times. And until I've really educated myself and realized the power of having a growth mindset and a belief that I can improve, I can get better. In fact, that's like the optimal way to live, and to not be afraid to do something that I'm not good at initially, and be willing to work at it to get better and better and better. And just because maybe I wasn't born with a certain skill doesn't mean I can't develop it, whether that's just something as important as leadership or even other things that aren't as important. So I really think that from a mindset perspective, it's just having this growth orientation, this belief that I can and will work on something to get better if it's something I care about, and that's possible. We've all probably experienced people who have more of a fixed and closed off mind to certain things, and I don't know about you, Jay, but I just struggle to really identify with that now after being deep in this stuff for so many years and being around so many others who don't think that way. That's really tough for me. So I try to approach people with curiosity instead of judgment, but that mindset just doesn't seem to, I don't think that's going to create the most optimal outcomes or even an enjoyable life. So to me, I think it's what's in your mind. You have control over that. And I just choose to believe that I can get better. I choose to believe that it's okay to not be good at something initially. If it's something you care about, then you kind of have to keep at it, and you do have the ability to get better if you're willing to put in the work. And that's something I try to embody each day too.
Wonderful. So give us if you will, give us an overview of each of the three parts so our listeners understand why we start with the build, right? How that leads to the fuel and then ultimately the chase. So an overview, and then maybe pick one or two key lessons from each of those sections that we can share with everyone.
Yeah, I mean, we thought of like a car analogy at one point when we were going back and forth with ideas on that. But I mean, I think you got to have the foundation of the proper mindset in order for any of this stuff to work. I think it's important to understand your why, what it is that drives you and pushes you to do what you do, and then to know that it doesn't really ever end. You're going to be constantly pursuing something in the chase of something. This thought process of excellence it's this never arrived, always becoming mindset. So you're always going, and there are countless stories of people who live by this. I try to do the same when it comes to just the general approach to life of knowing why I'm doing it, building a strong foundation, and then just having the stick-to-itiveness and the consistency to keep at something. To me, that part of it is really important. I think of, if you want me to highlight a part of kind of the why, I wrote a story about Jerry Seinfeld and Howard Stern. It's one of my more favorite stories in the book, when they were talking with each other, and Howard says to him, I guess you could will yourself to do what you've done, to do all the great things that Jerry has done with his TV shows now. Because I love Comedian in Cars Getting Coffee is one of my favorite shows. But I guess you could will yourself to doing that. And Jerry's like, I need to adjust your perspective. You can't. That's not will. You can't. It's too hard. You can't will yourself to do it. That's love. If you love something, it doesn't feel like a job. It's certainly work, but it gives you the ability to keep at it day after day after day. In Jerry's case, he loves comedy. He loves stand-up comedy. He loves writing for comedy. And that love is what's helped him create this TV show, as well as his stand-up acts. And now what he's doing with whatever shows he's involved with and other specials. It's love. So to me, I really identify with that, because I feel super lucky that that's what drives me, is a love of the craft of what I get to do each day. And that is so true that I don't think it would be possible to get up and do it 7 days a week if there wasn't a lot of love involved, because willpower is not strong enough. I had Benjamin Hardy on my podcast multiple times talking about this. He wrote a book called Willpower Doesn't Work. Willpower is finite. Love is infinite. And to me, I just really identify, and I know not everybody gets to do what they love every day. I understand that. But it's something that I really identify with, and I hope others can find something that like drives them in a way that love does with whatever it is they wake up and do each day.
Yeah. And, you also bring up Jerry Seinfeld in another section when you talk about not breaking the chain, and you talk about what Jerry has famously talked about, how, he has a calendar up, and he every day, very disciplined. He's always writing, and he marks an X through each day. So he doesn't break that chain. And it sounds like you take a similar approach to that discipline, and constantly working, writing every day, working on your own skills, the podcast, etc. Speak to that for a moment, and why that's so important.
Yeah, Steve Martin writes about this in Born Standing Up, an amazing book, by the way, of, when somebody asks, how do I make it in Hollywood? How do I make it as an actor or stand up or whatever? And they're asking about like getting in good agent and all these things. He's like, nah, it's not about that. It's about being so good they can't ignore you. And one of the ways that you can be so good they can't ignore you is you have the willingness and the ability and the mindset to get up and just do the work each day, to prepare yourself to get the work done each day. It's not sexy. It's not the fun answer. It's not the life hack. It's the part that people are like, I say this at times during Q&As of keynote speeches, and people like roll their eyes. It's not the answer they like to hear, because it's not fun. At least it sounds like it's not fun to me. I enjoy it, but if you ask the people closest to me, especially my wife Miranda, this is what she'd say is like, yeah, a willingness to get up and do the work every single day, every day. But she loves it because she knows how much I love it. And as a supportive best friend and partner, that is a gratifying feeling for her, just like I would feel the same way when she does what she loves. So to me, it's just this act of, I've made a commitment to myself. I'm not going to lie to myself. I love this stuff, so I'm going to do it every day. And that is what's sustained this thing over the past 7.5 years or however long it's been. That's what it is. And again, like there isn't really a hack. There isn't really a quicker, at least for me. Maybe if someone who's more talented could figure out a quicker and an easier way. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there are examples of that, but in my case, and in most people's cases, that's not the way it works. Like, we got to really grind at this thing. Most people I have found quit. They get to a certain point, it gets too hard, they lose momentum, they're like, whatever it is in their creative pursuit, and they're like, it's just not working. And maybe quitting is the right answer in some of those cases. Just in mine, since it's something I love, I've never wanted to do that. And so I think that's been the key to this, is just willingness to kind of get up and do the work each day so that you can consistently ship. I mean, I've never missed a Sunday of releasing my podcast since I launched it 7 years ago. Haven't missed a Monday for Mindful Monday emails in 301 consecutive weeks. Like, that stuff's important to me, and consistency and becoming a part of my listeners and my supporters' routines, which is a feedback I receive a lot. That's very important to me. So in order to do that, though, it can't be just a sometimes thing. Not for me. It can't. It has to be kind of a regular everyday thing in order to stay that consistent. And for me, I'm cool with that because I enjoy doing it. So, but I realize not everybody does. If some people start podcasts for the wrong reasons, it's hard to maintain and keep them going, as you know, if it's not because you actually love the act of doing it. If it's as a marketing tool to get more keynote speeches, which seems to be a big one that comes up when people ask me to help them start them, I'm just like, dude, it's going to be tough to keep this thing going, because if that's your reason for doing it and not the fact that you love the actual act of doing it, it's going to be hard. It gets really hard. So I think it might be tough. I think you got to find a better why.
Well, you are speaking my language, because I love that pursuit. I love that discipline. I love the fact that you love what you do, right? This is a choice that you make. And it is something that gets you out of bed every day. It is something that you're excited, that you're passionate about. And my hope for not only those that are listening or watching right now, but for everyone else out there who may not be tuning into this podcast, that you find that thing that lights you up, that creates that spark inside of you, like you're hearing Ryan talking about right now, that reason, that why. The how will take care of itself, but knowing what it is that you're going after, why it's so important to you, that it aligns with your core values, and that you put in the reps, that you go after it every single day with discipline and focus. And I love that. And it comes out in your voice, Ryan. I sense it. I can feel it. I can feel the energy. So as we are wrapping up the conversation, a couple of things for you, and to all the listeners, we're going to link to where you can purchase The Pursuit of Excellence. It is a well-written book. It is well worth the investment in time and also the investment in dollars. Go out and buy this book and consume it. You'll be glad that you did. So what challenge would you like to leave our audience with, Ryan?
I, in general, read more books. I like Ramit Sethi's rule of book buying. If you're even considering buying, this is not mine, this is any book. If you're even considering it for a millisecond, buy the book. If you get one idea, it is the greatest return on investment in the history of the world. Think about this. If you get one idea from a book that changes your life, and you pay $20 for that one idea that then changes the trajectory of your life, it's the greatest return on investment you could ever get. And so I just think leaders and people in general, we need to read more. Authors pour their lives into these things, these artifacts that cost basically nothing, and it has a chance to change your life. Now, if it doesn't, whatever, you lost $20, hopefully at least you're entertained the process. And if you weren't, I think that's the price of admission. Like, that's okay. So to me, I just think buying and reading books is a very wise use of your time and your treasure. So do that. Do that more. Whatever books you're thinking of, anybody or anything or something that was referred to you by a friend, buy the book, read it. If there's one singular idea that changes your mind, you just got an amazing bargain. So I really push people to buy and read books.
Here. That's thank you for sharing that. And I'm just going to be very candid with everyone, which I am on this show. I was not a reader in my youth. I did not. Okay. So I didn't really care for reading. And it wasn't, there was a one particular point where I was introduced to a Dale Carnegie course. This was when I first entered the corporate world. That rocked my world, and it changed everything for me. It changed the trajectory of my life, of my career. And then I became a reader, and I became a constant learner, and I can't get enough today. So it's never too late, but start now.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
Yeah. So Ryan, I've got all your social handles. We're going to link to that in the show notes, as well as your website, how to purchase the book. Here is my final question to you. So what's the most difficult decision that you've had to make in the pursuit of who you've become?
I got beat out for the starting quarterback job when I was in college at Miami University by Ben Roethlisberger. We were the same age, same position. I love everything about Miami University. I did not want to leave all of my best friends and my teammates in that school, but becoming a Division I starting quarterback took a higher priority than anything else in my life. And I agonized for months over that decision of whether I was going to leave or not, because truly I did not want to. And fortunately, my dad and my younger brother really pushed me to leave, and I'm glad that they did, because it gave me the opportunity to go and start and play and be team captain of another school, Ohio University, which is where I played my final 2 years and graduated from. So I would not have done that probably without that nudge. So I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful that I made that decision, even though at the time I didn't want to do it. But that was a big pivotal moment in my life.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And isn't it ironic that your brother, AJ, in the Super Bowl won against Ben and the Steelers when your brother was playing for the Packers?
It's weird, man. It's
Isn't that wild?
How the world works. It really is. Of all the teams that won the AFC the year that they won the NFC, it happened to be them. And then, for God, so glad that they found a way to win. That would have been
so amazing. I love that. Yep. Ryan, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on Business Minds Coffee Chat. I'm grateful for you. I appreciate you sharing of your knowledge, your insights, pulling back the curtain on your pursuit of excellence and bringing this wonderful book to life.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, Jay. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And for all of you, thank you so much for watching and listening. And would you please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review? We would love that. And to enjoy more episodes and to learn how Jay Shear Business Consulting can help build a solid foundation for your service-based business, all you have to do is visit jayshearbusinessconsulting.com. And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, pick up a copy of The Pursuit of Excellence, and use the tools to become your very best. And we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care.
Jay Shear
Business Consultant.
Jay Shear Business Consulting.